How's it going, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Here's the Crack podcast. Today we are joined in the studio by Andrew McKee, the founder and managing director of Start Solar. This is the stage where I pass over to you, Andrew, and kind of get you to explain a bit about yourself, who you are, and what is it you do.
All right. Thanks, guys, for having me. Great to be here. So I am the founder and managing director of Start Solar UK and Ireland. Have to obviously decipher that because obviously the Australian entity, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, so I am the man behind it, I suppose, and my wife. I can't forget her, else it'll be trouble. But we design and install solar PV and battery storage systems for commercial and residential properties. Mm-hmm. We also delve into EV charging, so for charger for electric cars, and we do a bit of energy auditing as well, and some heat pumps. But that's still something that's in the pipeline. But yeah, that's what I do.
And obviously from reading, and for anybody who maybe doesn't know about your company and what is it you do and stuff, I think what's cool is the fact that you've grew the company from literally nothing, the ground up, and it's now turning over at 15 million, and you've like 100 staff. Yep. So one could say it's pretty successful. And I think like we'll talk a bit about the energy and the solar side, and I'm gonna probably throw it over to Shay for the more technical questions. But I suppose from like more from to get to know a bit about yourself and the business, sort of where did your, I suppose, entrepreneurial journey start off?
It's a good question. I say it wasn't, and I always laugh at this question because what years gone by, I was so disappointed in myself that I wasn't that kid at school that used to sell chocolate bars for like double what they bought in the shop before school. I was like, fuck me, like, why was I not that guy?
That's the truth.
And so I suppose I'll call myself late to the party.
Right.
But yeah, so it all really started. So historically, I raced motorbikes for 10 years. So my whole weekends were spent at a motorbike track,
right,
getting covered in dirt and giving my mum lots of washing.
Right.
And then basically at one stage, my dad, I won the Irish Championship back in 2011, which was a great achievement. And after that, my dad says, right, you've got two options. Either go to university, give up motocross, and hopefully at some stage you'll do well at university and you can buy your own bike and you can do it again, or else you go and get a job and you fund it yourself.
Right.
So I was like, don't really fancy funding it myself. And that was another thing about the university. Like, I'll go into that after. But yeah, so went to work for a car wash.
Right.
Love cars. Cars are like my be all end all. Unfortunately, it's not electric cars, but we'll say no more about that. And yeah, I went to work in a car wash, and my dad said after a couple of weeks, like, oh, you wouldn't fancy getting my car wash, or like as we call that, valet, and basically valet his car. In home, Dad has quite a big garage and stuff, and he has all this stuff there. And after I cleaned his car, I was like, "Fuck me!" I was like, "I could make a business out of this."
Yep.
And he obviously gave me like 40 quid or whatever it was for it.
So you got 40 quid?
I know.
I washed my dad's car. I got nothing.
Well, dinner. I'll forget about all the times that I washed it before that, but I think it was because he sort of felt I'd taken a Saturday off to do it for him, and literally, I went on and created a Facebook page. Or no, I started posting all the cars on Facebook.
Yeah.
And people started messaging like, can you do mine? Can you do mine?
Yeah.
Like as soon as somebody posts their car clean, like there's one thing everybody hates. It's cleaning their car or cutting the grass.
Yeah.
I personally love both.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, done that, and basically 5 years I was at that.
Wow.
I gave up the car wash and obviously went into it full time, and I was going through university at the time, so every Saturday, near enough every Saturday, I would say probably 95% of my Saturdays for 2 years I spent working at cars.
Right.
You probably brought in a better wage than someone working the likes of like a shop during your
I did, and I'll not go too much in case HMRC's watching this, but like it was really, really good. It funded me through uni.
Yeah.
And I just loved it, like, you know, because I love cars, as I said, and, you know, I was getting Porsches, Ferraris, Range Rovers.
Oh my days, yeah.
But, like, at one stage, I think I was booked out for 6 months.
Wow.
And, like, guys even come back to me now and be like, Andrew, can you go back to car cleaning? Like, you know, I still can't find
Sure,
somewhere.
you're not up much, like.
I know, exactly. I goes, yeah, sure, all that free time I've got, yeah, I'll do it. Actually, do you know what? Since I came back from Australia, like, I think I've washed my car about 10 times over those 3 years, and I actually washed mine last night because I came back and went to the gym. I was like, it's a lovely night, I'll just wash it. Of course, rained today.
Yeah.
But so that's sort of where it all started, and then obviously I closed that down to go to Australia, and then obviously the next part of this podcast is going to be about basically the next bit of what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was your reasoning for, because a lot of people are doing it at the minute, what was your reasoning for going to Australia?
I get another clinker. So through school and different things in uni, like a number of friends like, oh, I'm going to Australia. I was like, all right, sweet, yeah, that'll be really cool. And I was never that one from a young age to be like, oh, I'm going to go to Australia, I'm going to go traveling. And it was one particular friend, he's like, oh, I'm going to Australia. And I was like, cool, when are you going? He's like, oh, I'm going to go next year. And he never ended up going.
Right.
And I was coming to the end of my masters, and I thought, do you know what, I'm going to go into Australia. And I don't actually know where it came from. And I'd only been with Susie for like, I think it was about 6 months at the time.
Yeah.
And because I got with her so during my final year, and she had wanted to go to Australia too. And we both just said, stuff it, let's go and book it. And we did. And I would have a very stubborn personality, and so would she. If I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it. Like, I'll literally go to the opposite end of the earth before I would not do it.
Yeah.
Literally.
And yeah, literally. And we did, and that's sort of where it all started. But it wasn't something that I had thought of for years. And me and Susie were looking back at the honor, we were literally together for 6 months, and we flew to the opposite end of of the world to go to Australia. And as everybody says, like, going to Australia with your partner, it'll either make you or break you.
Yeah.
You'll either stay together for forever, or else you'll break up.
Yeah.
Because being first time living together and different things. But we loved it, and we still travel a lot now.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, you're away on holiday again. And I was like, well, I traveled before I had a business.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's probably maybe what has led me to try and work things out faster.
Yeah.
That the business can run itself. And I again, look, great, a shout out to my team, because like I have a great team behind me.
Yeah.
And no great business will not have a great team behind them.
Yeah.
Because the team behind you is everything. Like, I'm only one person.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I've been through at the time where I've literally been ripping my hair out, been like trying to do like 3-4 jobs at once, and it's just literally. But in saying that, like, my business runs itself, but I'll still be on a laptop at 11, 12 o'clock at night doing quotes.
Yeah.
Because my role in the business, I suppose, if you want to call it now, is the sales director.
Right.
Like, I will go out and like, I still am the face of the company, and a lot of people want to deal with me.
Yeah.
So I will still go out, and that's mainly my job now, is to bring in the larger clientele.
Yeah.
Which are the large scale corporates, which is what I suppose, that's what I enjoy doing. And having my engineering background,
Yeah.
it lets me understand the workings and the mechanics of how the system works.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever a facilities manager asks you how it's going to be mounted onto the roof, you can tell them. Whenever an FD asks you what the numbers are, you can tell them. And when the general manager says, Andrew, is this thing actually going to save me money or is it not? You can actually break down the mechanics and tell them exactly how it's going to work.
Yeah.
So that's, I suppose, where that came from,
You alluded to it there. Uni. I was going to ask you, what engineering was it you studied it?
Yeah, so that was when I led to earlier on. I was meant to go to Inst for my sixth form, and I remember applying to Inst, and they didn't get back to me for like 2 weeks. And I was thinking, fuck me, I'm not going to get a spot in here. And my dad said, look, let's go down to Lisburn Tech and see if we can enroll you in something just in case. And I remember I wanted to do refrigeration, and my dad was like, look, I don't think you should do refrigeration. What? Refrigeration?
It's like building fridges.
No, like refrigeration is like heating and cooling, like, and like big cold, like cool rooms for like restaurants and all. And
I did not know that such a thing exists. No,
I didn't know the portion of it like it.
So they must have plumbing and refrigeration are two completely separate things.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like refrigeration would be like all your heating and cooling, like offices, like all that sort of. It's like in like big apartment blocks. And he's like, no, I think you should do engineering. So long story short, went into engineering, done it for 3 years, and then I was going to go on and do the HND, so that was a BTEC National Diploma. And then one of my mates like, oh, I'm going to apply for uni. I was like, maybe I should apply for uni too. So I applied to uni because my mate Darryl was applying to uni. And done the 4 years at that, and then was doing really well at it. And I then decided to apply for the Masters, and then ended up from somebody who wasn't going to go to uni, and then going and doing a Masters. And like one thing, and I've always said this throughout my journey, like I am not the smartest man in the room. Never have been smart. Always, my mum and dad were always told in the parent teacher interviews, Andrew talks too much. Andrew talks too much.
Yeah.
If Andrew would just get on with his work, he'd be all right. Well, here, look where I am now because I talk.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny, just, you know. And sometimes I think that the kids don't get enough of a break when they're growing up. Like what teachers, like sometimes teachers keep them down. I know that's changed a lot. Like I definitely do. I haven't been officially diagnosed, but I definitely have a bit of ADHD.
Yeah.
And if you can nurture that the right way, it can be very, very productive.
Yeah.
And then obviously going to university and doing, so yeah, like it's just hard work.
Yeah.
Like I'm a person, I just do not like to fail.
Yeah.
You know, and that's always been me. Like I wasn't the guy who could literally go through the whole year and everything would just go into your brain like a sponge.
Right.
Like I would sit for 2 weeks solid prior to exams and just write out pages. Like my kitchen table would just be filled with pages of writing.
Yeah.
And that I suppose that is what has got me where I am today. Is it's just grit and determination.
Yeah.
Just not wanting to fail
Yeah.
and putting in the hours.
Yeah.
What was the intention after uni then? Did you think you were going to go out and sort of work in engineering?
Well,
set up your own? Or?
if you want to call it a claim to fame, wasn't really a claim to fame because it didn't work out, but I suppose I wouldn't be here if it did. My claim to fame is I went for an interview with McLaren, Formula 1 team.
Yes.
So went over to McLaren Technology Centre. You know, you went through the big fancy building and went through the white tunnel and went up in the glass lift and all the Formula 1 cars in front of you. And like that was probably the most stressful thing. Say it now, like it's nothing compared to what you go through nowadays. But at that time, like I'd revised for like 2 weeks before, and I knew a guy in McLaren and was asking them questions and different things and did a presentation. And we went into this room and they had the nose cone of a McLaren, but to say Ferrari there, a nose cone of a McLaren sitting on the table, and we basically had to do like a manufacturing step-by-step process of how this nose cone would be manufactured. And they had 5 managers walking around the room. Now, bearing in mind, there's only 7 of us in this room, and walking around, and I remember just sweating a bit. I was like, "This is wild." You could hear a pencil drop. And anyway, long story short, I unfortunately didn't get it. But if I had got that McLaren job, like I definitely would not be where I definitely would have went to Australia. Like, because that was during my final year that I had applied for that. But that was my intentions initially after leaving uni, was to go. I said I love cars, so I'd applied to Bentley, I'd applied to Jaguar Land Rover, I'd applied to McLaren, Red Bull Formula 1 team, and I still have a large part, like mainly in motorbike racing, but I sponsor a couple of guys now in the British Superbikes.
Yeah.
And I just love being around that atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I suppose in what I do in renewable energy, but I can't help being a bit of a petrol head too.
Yeah.
Let's just say that I carbon offset.
Yeah. Very good. So obviously, like, what was your journey, like your first sort of employment, like your first sort of stint in employment in that sort of field where you've maybe done uni, you've moved, and you started off, where was it you said your first job was? You're going to embarrass me now. So I think I held a job. I've held a job outside of working for myself for about 6 months. Right.
It?
Yeah.
No longer than that?
No. I worked in JJB at Christmas.
JJB, remember
I know.
that?
Throwback.
We passed the JJB in Korean the other day, and my mate goes to me, "Oh my god, JJB!" Like it obviously has sat there. And no, it's closed. But it's sat there for that long. Like the signage is still there. So I worked there for obviously they bring in temp staff for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, and again, it's like everything I do is really want to get kept on. Like I was in the bike side of things, so I was building bicycles and selling bicycles, and I remember thinking, and do you know what? It was quite funny. So not funny, but it was this whole scenario. So this lady came up the stairs one day, and I went to speak to her like I did with every customer, and I realized pretty quickly she was deaf. So quick thinking on your feet, I went and got a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And let her basically write out everything, and I basically responded back. This before iPhones.
Yeah.
So I just wrote it on a piece of paper, and managed to figure out she wanted a bike for her daughter for Christmas, and managed to get everything sorted, and got her the bike and all downstairs and got it all in the car for her. And she was completely made up, obviously by facial expressions, but she was so delighted, and she actually went and recommended or give me a really good feedback. And I remember thinking, happy days, hopefully I'll get a chance of getting kept on, because I think there's about 7 of us and only 1 of us got kept on as a full-time member staff.
Yeah.
I obviously didn't. So at the time my dad owned a spar shop, so I think it was still that was still whenever I was racing, and I basically went to work in a spar shop. I think it lasted about 4 shifts, and I just didn't like it. I just didn't like being that retail. I had to sort of be doing something with my hands.
Yeah.
Just standing behind a till just bored me.
Yeah.
That's one thing I cannot stand. See clock watching.
Yeah.
So yeah, and done that, and I suppose I done a bit on the car wash, but then quickly went into my own. So yeah, I've had very little
Yeah.
employment history,
Yeah.
which is a bit mental. And I suppose in business, I've probably lacked a bit because obviously I haven't had that real life experience of working as a manager in another company and having that training of how to manage people.
That's what I was going to say there. Like, so many people get so hooked up on, I need to build experience, and they do it for years. And do you really think there's a need?
Yeah, I'll be the biggest advocate to turn around and say, just start.
Yeah.
You literally have to start. Yeah. If you start and you don't give up, you'll get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And I've always been that person to not fall into that trap of, oh, it has to be perfect. The name has to be perfect. The logo has to be right.
Yeah.
Oh, we have to have all the marketing in place. Nah, nonsense.
Mm.
You just have to start.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And look, some of the most successful businesses are businesses that have happened by chance.
Mm-hmm.
They fell into it.
Yeah.
It's just happened as a spin-off from something else, and it's
Yeah.
grew to bigger than the original. And that's again what we talked about earlier on. Like, that's one of the big things that I'd be pushing is you just have to start.
Yeah.
And if you fail, so what?
Yeah.
I never talk about failure. I talk about learning or succeeding.
Mm.
There's no such thing as failure.
Yeah.
You know, you either learn from your lesson and move on, but you'll never make the same mistake twice.
Yeah. So, explain to us then. You obviously went to Australia, and what was sort of that time like in terms of because I appreciate everybody kind of goes over there, and I suppose at the time you went over, it probably wasn't just as bad. Maybe it was in terms of like trying to find a house, trying to find employment, trying to like set up your way of living.
Yeah.
So, whenever you went over there, who was it you began to work for?
Yeah, so I knew a guy actually from Belfast who worked for Ferrari.
Yeah.
And he said, look, Andrew, there's a job going in Maserati.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, and obviously my love of cars, I was like made up. It was like McLaren all over again.
Yeah.
And it's long story short, he got me involved in that. And it was in like a sales and marketing role. And I remember thinking like, I was in like a shopping centre. Now, given the fact this is the largest shopping centre in the Southern Hemisphere,
Right.
like it's like Castle Court times about 15. It's huge. Like you need like a golf cart to walk around. It's like Dubai Mall.
Yeah.
And so I worked in there, and I remember this guy turned around and said to me one day, he goes, and will you be selling me the car? And I was like, God, I wish I could. But I was basically generating the leads and showing people around the car. And I remember thinking, like, I could do so much of a better job than the guy this is actually going to go to in the dealership.
Aye.
And I remember
You'll
thinking at the time,
Get the commission probably as well.
yeah, do you know what? It didn't even bother me at that stage. Like
Yeah.
commission, I didn't. I just literally loved, and I suppose that's where my passion for selling came.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't a natural. Like, I didn't come from selling phones and selling electric and doing everything. Like, I never sold before I then obviously moved into the solar, and so I ended up in. And I remember saying the guy saying, "Oh, you know, there's hopefully going to be an opening in the dealership to actually go into a full blown sales role." And like that's all I wanted was to get into that sales role. And then my wife, she had temporarily got in that back end process, she got a job in a solar company. And at the time she'd actually struggled to get a job. I do not know how. Like, this is a good looking girl, you know, very intelligent, with a law background.
Yeah.
Couldn't and struggled to even get a job in a cafe.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, because, you know, she had done all the training of how to hold the plates and she was so buzzing about doing it. But Australia can be like that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're looking back at Australia now, as a business owner now, I know how hard it is to get good staff.
Yeah.
And like, I still see people on Irish around Melbourne struggling to get work.
Yeah.
And I just know, like, the work is out there. It just baffles me how like the two can't connect. And, you know, I knew that anybody that Susie went to work for would be absolutely elated.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, she got a job in this solar company, which was pretty crazy because she had to get a bus and then a train and then another bus to get to work.
Wow.
Now, bear in mind, you live 5 minutes from work.
Yeah.
So it was pretty mental. And she got invited to like a Christmas dinner, psychological Christmas dinner. And I went along, and this guy picked us up in a stretched limo
Nice.
to go to this Christmas dinner, and I was like, "What is going on?" And he later on, I'll never forget this. This is your bag. He goes, "How could we get our, like, bearing in mind we're at an electrical Christmas dinner, so it's like going to like CF or Yes Electrical's Christmas dinner. Like, we're there with solar companies, electrical company." He goes, "Oh, how can we get our name mentioned above everybody else? Now we're at a greyhound racing stadium." He says, "Why don't you go and sponsor a race?" So he says, "You go do it." So I says, "Right, okay." So I went up and I was like, "Here, can we sponsor the race?" So the company was called My State Solar. So he's like, yeah, what's the company name? I said, blah, blah. So then he done that, and he couldn't believe. He goes, "You're a natural at this?" I goes, "No, you asked me to do something, and that's what I could do." She says, let's go for a walk. So we went for a walk. He's like, "Look, what do you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I work for Maserati." And he's like, "And what have you done before that?" I says, "Oh, well, I ran a car detailing company, bigging myself up, had this company for 5 years." And she's like, "Oh, come and work for me." And I was like, "Well, what are you offering?" And he's like, "Oh, I want you to be a general manager. I want to step away from the business and want you to run the company." I said, "Right, okay."
All because you sponsored a race?
Yeah.
That is mad. Like,
Australia's mental. Like, honestly, like the people out there are nuts. Like, and because the Irish are so renowned for working hard.
Yeah.
Like, we're like magnets. Like, they just, anywhere. Where are you from, Irish? Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
And basically then he goes, "Oh, come and see me tomorrow." I said, "No." "Why?" "I'm working." "I don't care. Come and see me tomorrow." "Nah, I'm working." "Right, okay. Come and see me tomorrow after work." I says, "Right, okay. I'll come and see you." So I think we settled on the day after something. I was off, but he was really, really pushy. So I went to see him, and he was like, he's like, "Do you have any experience doing this?" And I says, "No, but I'm pretty sure I can do it." He's like, "Right." And I didn't have a clue. Like, I was like, a general manager. Like, I'd clean cars and just come out of university. Like, I was so great at this. And I was like, "But sure, how hard can it be?"
Yeah.
And so that was dead on. And he said, "Look, what about salary?" I goes, "I'll take 100 grand. Oh, see, now bearing in mind Australian dollars is like half. So it's like 50,000 sterling. He's like, He goes, "Go sit downstairs 20 minutes. So I went done it and then come back up, and he's like, "I can give you 70 and then we'll increase it to 100 after probation." I was like, I was completely elated. Like, I didn't care. Like, I just come out of university. It's my first job.
Yeah.
So then I took it anyway, and wow, that was, I've probably learned more in that role than I did, in the roles superseding. Now, obviously I've learned a lot more since I ran my own business, but like, so this guy was a drug addict, a gambling addict, and an alcoholic.
And you didn't know this before you...
And I didn't know this.
All right.
Like, I just knew this guy was...
You were pulling on his heartstrings by betting the dog thing, him being a gambling addict.
Yeah.
He done it himself. I signed a disclaimer. But yeah, so I basically learned not the mistakes. I learned basically how not to run a company.
Yeah.
I learned like the dangers and what can happen. Like,
Yeah.
And I basically found out that the original founder of Start Solar in Australia, basically this guy was his ex-employee.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, Paul always reminds me of this to the day. He's like, so I was in the office so James was my first boss, and he's like, "I'll go and tell that guy down there that I'll be with him in 15 minutes. So I go down the stairs and I'm like, "Hi, I'm Andrew, the general manager." He goes, "What's your role?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm the general manager. James will be with you in 15 minutes. He says, "Right, okay, no worries." I go back upstairs. So obviously little did I know that this guy sitting downstairs was James's investor, and was his ex, and James hadn't told him that he was bringing on a general manager.
Right.
So Paul was sort of like, "Anything else I should know?"
Yeah.
And so we still laugh about that to the day. It was quite funny, and then basically after that, so things got pretty messy, and he was like, "Look, Andrew, I can't afford to pay your wage anymore as a general manager." He goes, "I want you to go out on the road." So I was like, "Yeah," like, and I was secretly glad because I could see the way things were going, and I couldn't wait to get out and sell. Like, I come from a family of business people, and my dad's done sales for 25 years.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't, like, I'm natural, like, I just love talking, and I love the competitiveness of selling. And I remember going on the road, and like within the first week, I sold in the first week, and in the second week, I topped the sales charts, and there was like 5 other reps. I was like, this is amazing. And then I racked up so much commission that he couldn't afford to pay the commission either.
Of course.
And basically, long story short, then Paul was like, look, Andrew, things are going pretty bad for James. Like, I think you should come work for me. And I found out that James was his original employee, and then he basically thought the grass was green on the other side, started out in his own. Paul had invested in him because Paul had taken pity on him, and things had went pretty sour. And then Paul was like, look, I'll show you how to make proper money. Because I was only selling the houses, and then I went to work for the commercial end. So we're doing like, basically, well, not even as big as what I'm doing now, but it was like sort of like small to medium businesses.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of how then I came to basically to working for Paul and the whole Start Solar journey. Then obviously worked for him for 3 years, headed up his commercial division, and then we got engaged. Susie and I got engaged a week before lockdown. We were in the Maldives and came back, and like literally came back to lockdown. And then he's like, look, we're going home to get married. He says, you coming back? He goes, I don't think so. I think our time's done, because I'm an only child. I lost my brother when I was young to cancer. And so I always told my mum and dad that I would never settle in Australia, as much as I would love to have.
Yeah.
I always said that I would come back. It wasn't they don't like long haul flights, so they wouldn't come out to visit.
Yeah.
So it was always going to be one sided.
Yeah.
And then he was like, look, Andrew, I think we should start a solar company in Ireland. And like the funniest thing about it now is, and like these family members have told me, they're like, Andrew, we thought you were nuts, like starting a solar company in Ireland. Like we thought you were going cuckoo. Like, and I was speaking to someone about this the other day, and we were sort of saying that like some of the best business ideas are the ones that people think you're nuts.
Yeah.
Because people thought I was nuts, everybody else had the same thing. Every Tom, Dick and Harry's a solar installer now, because everybody knows that how big the industry is.
Yeah.
But like we would call ourselves, I suppose, one of the early adopters.
Yeah.
We weren't the first solar company in Northern Ireland, but I like to say that we sort of re-engaged the market, because we were sort of the first one through Paul Kennedy, Lifelike Media. Big plug for Paul.
Yeah.
Me and him, basically in the middle of COVID, in a wee small office, like 2-desk office in Lisburn, done all these marketing videos and got them up on social media, and like overnight just boom, with like we rented an office space in Lisburn Enterprise Centre. We outgrew that, so we had 2 desks, and that was January 2021, and we outgrew that space in 3 months. And then we basically moved to a 5,000 square foot warehouse. So going from like 100 square foot to 5,000 square foot in 3 months. And I remember thinking, like, Paul was over at the time, and I remember thinking to myself, I goes, what am I doing? I was like, I've bit off more than I can chew. Like going from 100 square foot or whatever it was to 5,500 square foot warehouse with a 5-year lease. Like, this is all like new to me. And I'm like, do you know what? Stuff it. Go big or go home.
Why do you think it did grow so fast at that stage? I think it was like sort of partially what Paul was doing for you, and do you think it was people, like, how were you getting people interested in it?
Well, that's the thing, like, and all due respect to Paul didn't bring, like, as in my business partner Paul, Paul didn't bring in, like, he didn't bring the customers. He brought the infrastructure in the back end, and we transferred a container of panels from Australia to Northern Ireland. The panels actually arrived back in Northern Ireland before I did. And but me and PK, we basically done all the marketing videos, and I think the timing was just perfect.
Yeah.
Because electric prices, because of COVID, started to go up. People had disposable income, and I don't actually know what triggered it, but I'll never forget the day that the first time our office phone rang, and it was a guy. Basically a system had broken down, and he wanted it replaced, and that was the first job. And again, like the car detail, just put everything on social media. Started the Facebook page, and it just grew. When we started the Facebook, we were the first solar company, I would say, in our at that time to do Facebook ads. Yeah, and they just literally went. And in fairness to Paul Kennedy, he knew what he was at, and he still does. And it just blew up overnight. Yeah. And once we moved into the warehouse, I think in March or April of 2021, and we were in there for just over a year, and then we outgrew that, and then we obviously expanded down south, and took a warehouse down there, and from January 2021, as I call it, a stand and start, we went from nothing to 3 years later to having 5 warehouses.
Yeah.
So we've got one now in Lisburn. We still have the one in Banbridge, but it's sort of sublet. We've got 2 down south, one in Cullen, one in Cork.
Yeah.
And then we have one in Manchester now, and then we've got a small satellite office in Lisbon or in London.
Yeah.
How have the like sort of logistics of it changed from you have started up? You said there that you'd like imported solar panels from Australia, which obviously there's a massive cost to do. Are you still doing that, or are you getting them more local or producing them more locally, or?
Well, obviously that container of panels, they're not produced in Australia.
Yeah.
But Paul had that stock.
Right.
And we just basically sent it over. One of our I suppose our USPs in the market is we do buy a lot of our stock direct.
Yeah.
Because we have a massive buying power because of the Start Solar Group. Mm-hmm. But I suppose the UK and Irish identity is big enough to buy in bulk on their own. Mm-hmm. So and that's why we need the warehouses, because we buy so much stock.
Yeah.
So we get roughly 3 containers per month into the warehouse. And again, it's either coming from Japan or China or Malaysia, like are sort of the common destinations. So they're not coming from Australia anymore. They're basically coming from Southeast Asia. Yeah. And that's basically, so stock comes in, sits in the warehouse, and then basically the guys come in the morning and load up in the vans and basically go out.
Yeah. And was that something you did from the start? Like after that, like say, for example, once you'd finished that first container of solar panels, where did you go after that? Did you like instantly go looking in the likes of Malaysia and China for more supply, or?
Yeah, so we, that's one thing that Paul, my business partner, has helped me with is, he has great links in the industry because he's been at it for over 14 years. And but by the time that first container had sort of dwindled down, we had already made a contract or had made inroads with main suppliers to then basically for the next container to roll through. But even at that, like that was the big thing, like buying our own container from our own cash flow at the very beginning and bringing it in. But it was a really good feeling. But it's all happened so fast.
Yeah. Was that scary though too? Like purchasing that whole as you say, the first container of your own, and thinking, fuck, I need to sell these now. Like this is.
Yeah, like the first container that we bought was probably the only one, but at the same time, things were moving so fast that I didn't even blink.
Yeah,
like you didn't even think twice about doing it, because the market was so hot at that time that you knew everything that you ordered was sold.
Yeah,
and by the end of 2021, start of 22, we had already amassed such a large pipeline of work.
Yeah,
like at one stage in 2022, we had a 6-month wait. So somebody had ordered solar panels, had to wait 6 months before we could install it because we had so much work. And, I suppose there's no truer saying than you're a victim of your own success. Mm-hmm. So we were obviously losing work to competitors, because if a competitor said, I can fit your panels in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Now, there's that fine line of someone saying, well, like, do you want someone to come and paint your house that can start tomorrow? Or do you want someone that's going to start in 3 months? They're obviously going to start in 3 months for a reason. They're obviously good at what they do. Mm-hmm. And we were, and one of our biggest things is that all of our guys are all employed. Like we run a fleet of 44 vans across the UK and Ireland, and we're fitting about 15 houses a day across the 3 companies. And, that's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of things, a lot of logistical, things and installation coordinators of, different roofs and commercial and residential. Mm-hmm. And, getting the panels, so to answer the question, I suppose it was scary, but it just feels like such a long time. And we've had so many containers since that you didn't even really think about it. Yeah. You're just like, and I suppose that's where I was very blessed to have Paul by my side, because he's like, bro, don't worry. Like this will all sell. Yeah. Like don't stress. Yeah. And trust me, there's been plenty of times where I've went back to him, stressed to helping, like what I do, and difference, whether it's staff or stock or cash flow. But do you know what? You look back at it now and you think it's just like, it was unreal too. Yeah. Like it's just, good or bad, I always try and look at the good side of every situation. Yeah.
Why do you think it has sort of took off here? Because I suppose from my perspective, I've worked in like architecture, but like a big problem now is there's not many incentives from the government with Stormont and stuff out. So you're not really getting much funding for the likes of solar panels or the renewable energies.
This is where I started in my sales pitch.
So like, why do you think people are? Do you think people are really invested in it now? They are believing in like it is the future now.
So whenever we obviously started doing this, it was still early doors. Yeah. Compared to where we are now, and yeah, you were relying, and I suppose there probably was a lot more selling
Yeah.
and people having the trust in the product.
Uh-huh.
But it's like anything, you know. As soon as the electricity prices started to rise, people were like, "We need to do something." Like whenever electricity was like 6, 7, 8, 9p a kilowatt
Yeah.
for big commercials, nobody cared.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, solar panels? Why did he do them? Unless they were being squeezed by like a supermarket. But from the residential homeowner, again, solar panels is like, well, and still to this day, thankfully it is getting lesser and lesser, but it's still like solar panels don't work in Ireland. What are you on about?
Yeah.
And like I actually take great delight in responding whenever I have a bit of time to people on Facebook about like why the solar panels don't work, and I'm like, let me have an hour with you. They're like, nah, I'm not interested. I'm like, how can you turn around and say that something doesn't work if you won't even give it a chance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the best way, and I used this line last week at Balmoral show, I use it all the time. It's like, if you don't invest in solar panels, you're going to spend that money regardless on electric. But if you do invest in solar panels, once you get your money back in 4 or 5 years, which is roughly what the payback is now, after those 4 years and you've got your money back, you now have an asset and you have cheaper electric bills, and everything beyond that point is a profit. But if you didn't, after 4 years, you still pay that same electric bill, don't you?
Yeah. So that was one of the things I was going to ask you then. Like, what is the sort of timeline before you are returning on your investment and sort of
It's
in
like
surplus?
there's so many variables. Obviously, the expense at the minute in the solar systems is obviously the battery storage,
Yeah.
and that will extend your payback because you're not actually generating any more electric.
Yeah.
You're just making better use of it,
Yeah.
i.e. instead of sending it back to the grid, you're basically storing it in a battery and use it at night time. But if you don't have a battery and you send it back to the grid, one of the retailers will actually pay you, Power and I will pay you 14.7p to send it back to the grid.
Yeah.
So, you know, the battery storage isn't just as crucial, and battery storage is not for everybody. It depends on how you live.
The batteries are pretty new, aren't they? They're not like older solar panels. Wouldn't they have been like sort of your power? You wouldn't have much storage.
Yeah, battery has only really started to get popular
Yeah.
in the last probably 2-3 years, i.e. because the cost has come down dramatically. But obviously, and the thing about it is now, just to go back to the original question, like, you know, there are so many people that have solar now.
Yeah.
Like we've done, you know, over 1,500 installations. And so a lot of our work is now off referrals,
Yeah.
because that analogy of solar panels don't work has gone. Because everyone's like, Jim down the road's like, here, I got solar panels installed, my bills are halved.
Yeah.
Flip, I must speak to Start Solar.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. And that's just
Yeah.
like, we've now done streets of solar panels.
Yeah.
Or we've went to companies where we've done 8 of their sites.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I was to come to your house and say, right, Shay, put solar panels in, how much is it going to cost you, Andrew? Well, say the average cost is $5,000. Don't have $5,000. All right, well, then let's put it on a finance plan. Can you afford £100 a month? Yeah, I can afford that. Grand, let's do it. Because if you don't do it, you're going to spend that money anyway, so why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah.
I suppose with the finance, it's essentially you're paying your electric bill every month. Like.
Well, the way we look at it, now this is more for the commercial, because once you go into the bigger systems, the price per kilowatt comes down.
Yeah.
But if I turn around to a business owner or a farmer and turn around and say, if you put solar panels in with no money up front, so no deposit, and just pay it on a monthly payment, but if your monthly payment out is less than what your savings are, so if you save more per month off your electric bill than what your payments are, you're technically cash positive from the start,
Yeah.
which is a very, very powerful statement to make, but it is true. And the proof is in the pudding. We have the proof there that can be done. So still to have an argument with somebody that can turn around and say why solar panels can't be installed,
Yeah.
you know?
What was it? I was going to ask you about, you were saying there about selling it back to the grid and stuff. Do you think the likes of like NIE and all are really paying enough for that? Is £14 a kilowatt or 14p a kilowatt?
14.7.
You're actually buying it off them? Is it like 30 something?
Yeah. So you're it's
Yeah,
roughly
that-
half. And like,
Yeah.
you know, people turn around to me and say all the time, and I suppose it's great to be to now actually get this out in the open, because, you know, it's not until you're actually on camera to be able to say all this. But like people say, you know, well, why is Power and I not paying me like for like?
That's what we get people in.
And I'm like, well, of course they're not going to pay you like for like. You at the end of the day have to make a profit margin on it. Like they have to make a profit margin on selling the power. You know, pay their overheads, pay their staff. You know, and don't get me wrong, 14.7p is probably the cheapest power that they're buying.
Yeah.
Because how electricity companies actually work, they actually buy power at an auction. They actually go to an auction and they basically bid for the price of power. Yeah, it's quite a crazy world.
Yeah.
Like it's like a black market in the background, but yeah. So
Yeah.
and that's basically where a lot of the electric companies got stung.
Yeah.
Is they're basically having to hedge the price of power because they're buying obviously in advance.
Yeah.
Um,
And so then, how does it work then? So obviously your solar panels are being powered throughout the day whenever the sun's out, but during nighttime, are you relying on your battery, and then you're taking electricity from the grid or what? Or
yeah, so it's I suppose it's trying to offset as much as you can. So again, it's down to that thing. Well, if to try and do as much as you can in the house during the day,
yeah,
like whenever you have a battery, you only have an infinite amount of energy in that battery.
yeah,
So don't leave your dishwasher and your tumble dryer and everything to nighttime, because you only have, like, say you have a 5 kilowatt hour battery, you only have 5 kilowatts there to use.
yeah,
So try and do everything during the day when the solar's producing.
yeah,
And then people say, right, okay, so as soon as the sun comes out, I stick on the dishwasher, tumble dryer, and put on clothes wash on. No.
yeah,
You don't go from having a load of like 300 watts because you just have a couple lights going to having this massive load of like 5 kilowatts. You want to stagger it to give the solar as much opportunity to cover as much of that as possible. Like that's essentially what you're wanting to do. You want to cover as much of your usage under solar as possible.
yeah, yeah.
So
Even the likes of like the air source heat pumps and stuff that are coming in now, they have to be constantly running.
yeah.
They power them through. Well, will a battery suffice to power that through the night? The likes of that.
Well, that's where we would obviously advise customers to try and run the heat pump as much during the day as possible.
Yeah.
And obviously, the heat pumps, the way sometimes they work is they'll click in and out during the day and night time to maintain a constant temperature.
Yeah.
But like, because I was actually with a customer earlier on, and he has a 12 kilowatt heat pump and his bills were through the roof. Now we're just getting his solar installed at the minute. And he said, what roughly do you think my business? I said, well, I would say comfortably, we'll reduce them by 50%, maybe even more, just depending on battery storage, how you use your energy, how savvy you are during the day, nighttime usage, X, Y, and Z. Do you charge a car and all that stuff? And I'm like, yeah, but you do realize that like you might have a big electric bill, which we're going to now reduce that with solar, but you've no oil bill or gas bill.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing as well, which is a big point to note, is we have another device as well that we can basically wire into the immersion heater of the house. So if you don't
Like
have
retrofitting it?
yeah. So basically we basically wired into the immersion circuit. So when there's more solar being produced, so whenever you have surplus power from your solar, before you send it back to the grid, I can send it through to the hot water tank and heat up your hot water.
Yeah.
And it will roughly on average saves a fill of oil a year. So a fill of oil is like 600 quid, maybe even more. That was as much as 900 quid because that's based on a 900 litre tank. But like that's so if once you add the oil savings and the electric savings.
But that doesn't have to be a specific type of solar panel to do that. Is there two types of solar panels, isn't there?
Yeah, there's
PV and
solar thermal and solar PV.
Yeah.
So the solar photovoltaic is obviously your solar electric.
Yeah.
Your solar thermal is just hot water. But we can basically kill two birds with one stone now.
Yeah.
Because solar thermal panels are a couple of £1,000 to install, whereas I can give you a device for 600 quid, which will do the same job.
Yeah.
And the UV solar thermal actually requires heat from the sun,
Yeah.
whereas solar PV just requires UV.
Yeah.
So whenever people say, "Oh, solar doesn't work in Ireland," it doesn't actually need direct sunlight.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to have the sun beaming down on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's UV rays.
Which
And
still can come through clouds and whatnot. Yeah.
As long as we continue to get daylight,
Yeah. There's UV.
You're
still getting UV ray. Yeah.
Like late in the evenings and stuff too.
See, like again, back to your whole marketing employees, like whenever it was snowing, we didn't have really much snow this year, but whenever it was snowing 2 years ago, I remember screenshotting one of the apps and basically proving to customers that the solar panels were still generating when it was snowing because there's still UV.
Yeah.
As long as there's daylight, there's UV because daylight is UV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and whenever you explain that to people, like, it makes sense now.
Yeah.
Whereas people just think, oh, sure, we need to be in Spain or we need to be in.
Yeah.
And fun fact, we've actually compared solar systems in Australia and in Ireland during the summertime. And believe it or not, a solar system in Ireland will outperform a solar system in Australia during the summertime.
Why is that? Just higher UV?
Solar panels don't like heat.
Right. Because that's obviously the first thing you think. You need sun, heat. That's
And the only way that, and I again love this, the best way I can describe it is what happens to your iPhone when you leave it in a sun lounger in Spain. Turns off.
Yeah.
Gets to overheat.
Yeah.
Same as solar panels, they don't like heat. So an Irish summer of like 20, 22 degrees is optimal for solar panels. And you can actually see on
So
a
people
graph.
who have solar panels in their house right now are probably loving life because it's been nothing but cracking weather.
Exactly.
Clear skies, 22 degrees. The
If we got this weather every year, which don't get me wrong, May historically has been a good month.
Yeah.
But if we got this during the summer times, like there'd be no issues.
Yeah.
And I mean, Irish people will complain regardless, won't they?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a farmer, it's either too dry or too wet. There's no in between, is there?
Yeah.
Definitely not. You're saying there about then like retrofitting them as well, like in the older houses, you can fit them into your water tank and stuff. Is there difficulties with retrofitting, or is it sort of plain sailing with the likes of, say, the rafter loading and like fitting it through old electrical supplies and stuff? Is it straightforward, or is it a bit more difficult than the likes of a new house?
Like, yeah, so I mean, the best thing about it is nowadays is like new houses nowadays, every house built from July 23, so planning regs, this would be airbag shade, but all have to have solar panels.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't stipulate that new houses have to have solar panels. It stipulates that there has to be an energy reduction. I think it's 30%. But the only way that a developer can achieve that on the SAP calculations is solar panels or heat pumps.
Yeah.
But solar panels are the cheaper option.
Yeah, that's what we had to do, because a lot of people, as you like the old fashioned, they want to keep their oil boiler or maybe their gas, so the only way to offset that is to put their solar panels on. I think it's you have to hit the 85 plus rating.
Something like that, yeah.
ABC.
But I suppose to answer the question, Shay, is you like, don't get me wrong, not every house is easy.
Yeah.
A slate roof is a lot harder than a tile roof. But, you know, that's why we have such great staff that are well trained and no roof's an issue. But some roofs take longer than others. The installation process of a slate roof is a lot more time consuming. But the hardest thing that we do, and that's the beauty about the new build houses, about them all having to have solar, the hardest bit that we have is getting a cable from the fuse board, which is always downstairs, to the roof space. Because you're routing through somebody's house.
Yeah.
So you're trying to find cavities or like behind a wardrobe or in through a wardrobe to try and keep a cable hidden.
Yeah.
You know, and worst case scenario, basically just tee out from the inside out, go up the gable wall in conduit behind like a drain pipe or something, then back into the roof space. But that is the hardest part about what we do.
Yeah.
And fair play to the electricians out there that find the ways, because like I walk into some house, I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't know how the guys do, but they always find a way.
I remember bringing an internet cable from my like whenever I bought my house, I remember bringing an internet cable from like as soon as you walk through the door upstairs into the roof space, across and down into like an office space.
Yeah.
I remember like I would be absolutely useless at stuff like that, but I remember an electrician coming out and like he was sitting trying to explain to me what he was doing, and I had to leave the house. I was just like, mate, just crack on, because you seem to know what you're doing. So I completely agree. Like I think that's what scares a lot of people though, is like they don't want to do these things or this new sort of stuff because they're scared of like breaking the norm if they're used to their house and they don't want to drill into walls and all. But that's the beauty.
From the neighbour down. Oh, jeez, don't buy that. That's a load of witchcraft. That
the amount of people get put off by that. Oh, they're going to rack around the house. They're going to do this, and like if you go on the social media, like that's one thing about me is, again, back to like the Carcton days. Like I have serious bad OCD, and like if I see a job going up and it's not symmetrical, or like something's not right, and you know our guys take great pride in like how the job's left and hoovering up after themselves, because like at the end of the day, when someone's like I've had workmen in my house, and like when someone leaves a mess behind, it does leave a bit of a bad taste. You might sort of think to yourself like, could not even have cleaned up after themselves, like whether it's just a quick wipe. But so that's one thing about us. And because somebody says to me, you know, some guy came to me at the Balmoral show and he's like, why your company? And I said, and of course, pointing in the corner, well, we're award winning. But I was like, you know, we all do the same thing. We all install solar panels. We can all install solar panels. We can get the same solar panels. It's who can get them at the best price. And like that's one thing that annoys me, is price isn't everything. You know, and we like I can't be the same price as a one-man band, like who has no overheads and works from the house. Like I purposely have built the company, and we have all the in-house guys, we have all the insurances, we have all of our ISO accreditations, you know, so we are catered for the big stuff. You know, we've in-house health and safety, in-house project managers. That all costs, you know, but we try our best to, you know, to be and we are very competitively priced in the market for what we do.
Yeah.
Considering the fact is our guys are all in house, and but we just, that is the thing for me. It's the customer service. It's making sure that from end to end the customer's like, that was smooth and that was slick.
Yeah.
So everything that we do is all digital. Customer sales agreements, all that stuff is all done digitally. Sent to the customer's phone, signed on a iPad or phone. All the handover pack after is all done digitally. There's no paperwork.
Yeah.
So it is a real slick operation, and fair play to my business partner Paul. Our CRM system is our own inbuilt CRM system that we've worked on for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And it is slick. Like everybody comes to us. Like I remember we had an audit one day from MCS, who is like the affiliation body for solar for the UK. Like they are like the governing body. And I remember the auditor said, "Flip me, you'd be far better off getting out of solar panels and going into selling that CRM. That's unbelievable."
Yeah.
And you know what it is, and it is really good. It was. So that's where we hone in. Is it's obviously in-house guys, because no offense to subcontractors, but whenever a main contractor and a subcontractor get involved, and I've been there and done it, where there's been a problem with a job, and you go back to the subcontractor, it's like, hey, I'm done, mate. You've paid me. I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want to know about it, and that is a problem. Whereas my guys are in-house, they listen to me. I sound like a really bad boss, but they listen to the team, and if we ask them to go to a job because we postpone an installation to go and sort somebody out, we'll have them there the next day.
Yeah.
And that's what people want.
Yeah.
And it's all well and good going for the cheapest option at the start, and then it gets subbed out, and then we've got you only know about things until you've got a problem.
Yeah.
That's how you know you're dealing with a good company. Anybody can do the installation. Yes, maybe they cock up the installation, but it's whenever you have a problem that you know you're dealing with a good company or a bad company.
Yeah. Explain to us then, so obviously you kind of alluded to it, so I think a lot of people obviously will see the association with Start Solar in Australia, and obviously that Paul's the business partner of yours, but I think the main thing to home in on is that you took the business over to the UK and built it from the ground up. So sort of, I know you've alluded to working with Paul Kennedy and stuff in that, but explain that sort of process in terms of like coming over back from Australia, and it's almost like you're starting a business from scratch. You obviously have the blessing of having prior knowledge and a bit of backing in terms of sourcing product and that sort of the drive behind you, but it was yourself who kind of built it. So explain that process in terms of like coming back and now then going, what do I do now? Because obviously in the UK and Ireland, solar panels probably wouldn't be as a big of attraction to solar panels over here as there would be over in Australia.
Yeah, and going back to what we said before, family members thinking that we were absolutely nuts, and I suppose the only process that I followed, and it all happened in sort of like an across, pretty quickly, but we came back and we're like, right, so whenever I came back, we got all the accreditation set up. So I knew that I had to have an office.
Yeah.
Why did I need to have an office at that stage? Looking back, I don't know. But anyway, I needed to have an office. Probably Paul said, we need to get an office. It was only a small office, like I said, back in the Lisburn Enterprise. And we done an installation at my dad's house. So I basically done that, for nothing for my dad, for all the heartache that he put up over the years.
Yeah.
And, we documented that whole process. We documented that whole installation, and then we done an install for my in-laws. Again, just, this wasn't business. This was just, at this stage, this was just basically running at a loss.
Yeah.
Buying the stock in, and we done that, and all the marketing videos, and then basically, once we done them two installations, we put them up. We then basically, we were on the board. We had done jobs.
Yeah.
We had now, because that was obviously the biggest thing, was getting the accreditations up, but basically getting everything set up.
The proof.
So we ran through like my parents and my in-laws' job like it was a proper job.
Yeah.
So we done the sales agreement, got it all done out properly, done all the accreditations, done all the registration with NIE. Like we look after all that as a company now. Like we do, it's an end-to-end service. So when a client signs up with us, we do everything from start to finish. There's nothing the customer has to do. And once we had ran through all the motions, once we had finished the first job, we're like, right, we've now done a full job end to end. And that was probably the biggest thing, and that was probably the most daunting thing, was trying to learn all the new regulations of what you needed to do. Because realistically, whenever I came, I hadn't really researched again, it's back to what we spoke about earlier, Shay, about just getting started.
Yeah.
And that was me. I didn't care. We were just going to get started, because I always find if you get started, you'll soon learn along the way what you had to do. Whether it's somebody comes chasing and said, here, you're meant to pay me, or you're meant to do this, or you're meant to do the other. And I suppose, that's really how it just happened. Yeah. Once we done those 2 installations, people then started to say, sit here, Andrew, come and see me about solar panels.
Yeah.
And then my uncle bought a system off me, and fair play to him, because I remember thinking back at that time, I was like, fair play to him, but is he mad? Like, now he's an accountant. So, what does that tell you when an accountant's doing solar panels? Now, we've done many accountants to date now. So if accountants are doing it, you're obviously sort of on the right train of thought, aren't you, really? Like I remember I was at an event recently, sort of going off topic here, but I was at an event recently, and a customer came up. He'd been a customer for 2 years, and he had approached me. He says, "Look, Andrew, you may or may not remember me." I says, "No, Chris, I do remember you." He says, "How are you?" And he says, "Look, I'm really, really good." He says, "Just want to let you know, like, you came to see me about solar panels, and you gave me the whole sales spiel about why you, and there was never anybody else. It was always going to be you, and I had already made up my mind about solar." And he says, "I'm on course to have my money back in 3 years." And that's an accountant who spreadsheets galore. So there's no more proof in the pudding. It's a customer who's not paid to say it, and he's an accountant who understands the numbers. So when someone asks and says, "Oh, you're never going to get," like somebody earlier on, "Oh, you don't get your money back in 10 years. Rubbish. Rubbish. Show me the proof.
So for you, it was a case of getting the systems in place to actually almost like prove to yourself and to customers that this can actually work. So obviously taking the time to trial and fit, and your parents and your in-laws and stuff was like kind of, I suppose it was killing a couple of birds with one stone. You were proving that you could successfully do this from start to finish from a business operational perspective, but then also from the marketing side, you were collecting all that content and the footage to basically put it out there on Facebook ads and promotion, so people were actually going, well, they've actually done it, the proof's there. So then explain to us, you kind of said earlier on, the first time the phone rang in the office, what was that like?
It was surreal, and what does the saying always goes, you never forget your first. So like again, this guy rang, and we went up, and again, this was the first person outside of family. Because obviously my uncle sort of bought the first system, and we went up, and he was up in Claudy. And I remember going up and thinking to myself, like, it's so weird. Like, obviously I'd done this in Australia, but you go to your first client at home, and you're like, oh. Like, and you're answering all the questions, and thankfully he had a system in before. So, he knew about solar, so there wasn't really as much of a sell. I was only selling him a system to replace his existing system. So there wasn't really too much involved. Now this system had been damaged, so that's why it had to be replaced, and then the insurance company was paying for it. So it was handy from that end. But like after that, I can't even remember how it all went after that, because once that installation was all done, we were obviously running Facebook ads at that time. And then I suppose it was good to note as well. So whenever we had arrived back home from Australia in September 2020, my wife, Susie, she had got a job in another company. And then like she was a subcontractor. But then in January 2021, I was like, here, come and join me in the business. And I remember being out, I was out, obviously said earlier on about me being involved in motorbikes, and there was a place up in Moira that done like electric motorbikes. And one of my good pals, he had come off the bike and tore his MCL. And I remember bringing him to the hospital that night, and I sort of turned around and said to him, I goes, I suppose I'm going to have to give you a job now, because you're wrecked and you're not going to go back to your own work. So I basically, in January 2021, I brought on Susie and brought on one of my best mates, Matt, and like I didn't know how I was going to pay them. But I knew that I had to do it. Now we were buying leads as well off like an internet, like a lead generation platform. And like in fairness to my wife, like she like I'd seen her selling in Australia, so she had started off on the phones, and then she basically, whenever I was out selling, then she had basically started selling. Well, actually, it was quite funny. I'll have to tell the backstory. So when I'm back to Australia, whenever I'd went to work for Paul, my original boss James did not like the fact that we had went, because he was like quite like a, you know, all macho, like, you know, I look at me in this big company and yada yada, look all the money I'm making, even though he wasn't. And whenever he went to work for Paul, he really didn't like it. So he like wangled his way into like, he wanted to be like the sales manager for Paul. And Paul was having none of it. But anyway, basically Susie and James had a Barney in the office one day, and Susie stormed out crying. And we both basically threatened to leave. Obviously, you know, Susie's like, we're leaving. I was like, yeah, whatever. We'll go with another solar company or something. And Paul was like, look, don't leave. Like, I'll let you and Susie go out on the road on your own, and I'll get you a car, and you just go out and sell, and I'll tell James that you've left.
Mm-hmm.
So we to James we had left, and so James didn't find out. Basically, Paul had renamed me on his phone Ahmed. Right. And I was submitting my sales under Ahmed. Right. And James knew nothing about this. So me and Susie were out like working like 3 hours outside Melbourne, and basically submitting all these sales, absolutely killing it out in the road under Ahmed. And he didn't know anything about it. So that was quite funny. And I forget what the original.
You employed your Susie.
Oh, so employed Susie. So I knew what she could do.
Yeah.
And like, I suppose a couple of months into 2021, you know, she was out in the road. Like, bearing in mind, like, it's so funny. Like, we got her this week, see at Ibiza. I bought it off my cousin. It's like 500 quid or something. She was out, like, she was doing maybe like 1,000 mile, like a week.
Oh my God.
And like, she's going everywhere.
Yeah.
But like, and that is like the grit and determination which has got us to where we are. Like, this was the middle of, no, not the middle of COVID. Like 2021, we were sort of out the back end of it, but there was still, I think there was a lockdown in that January.
Yeah.
And like if people wanted us out to their houses, like, we were going out, whether we were sitting with a mask on or whether we were sitting in their garden, whatever it was. But we just had to be operational.
What way does that work? Do you just do you ring people, sort of get in contact with them and then go out and see them, or is it just you land at their door? You don't do that, do you?
No. We're far.
That's not cool. Yeah.
No,
I see your roof spare there.
Here, sometimes I think we should maybe do that. To go out and say, here, you've got a perfect roof. You know, you can be making thousands off your roof. But no, so people will inquire through our website or through our we have a lead generation funnel on Facebook. Mm-hmm. So like, it's again like, well, people, you know, don't want to leave their details on Facebook in case it's sold to a third party. But like, it's literally for our, like, we have to capture your data and contact you somehow. Yeah. And we have to make it easy for people to inquire. So people inquire through our Facebook, it comes on, it goes directly into our CRM. Yeah. And then, like Susie or me or anyone else in the team, like, lift the phone and say, you know, Sandra here from Start Solar, you made an inquiry for solar panels. You know, are you just inquiring? Do you want a couple of prices over the phone, or would you like us to come out and see you? Mm-hmm. One of our biggest USPs, we'll always go out to see the customer. Yeah. Some of the other providers don't. They just quote over the phone, whereas we'll go and sit with the customer. Yeah. It has to be a personal service. Yeah. And for me, you have to basically let that customer know as much as you can to visualize what that's going to be like. So we have a software where I can basically place the panels on their roof, and I can tell them how much it's going to generate, what their rough savings are going to be, and then basically what roof we're going to use and how it's going to look on the roof. Mm-hmm. So if the customer can visualize things as much as possible, you tell them where the equipment's going to be stored, you tell them how the cables are going to be ran within reason. You know, we're not electricians. But within reason, then the customer's like, well, what more is there to do? Like, I've seen the panels on the roof. Because, like, the biggest thing about sales is getting the customer to trust you. Yeah. That what you're saying is not rubbish. Yeah. So if I can basically, I'm like, don't take my word for it, I can tell you anything. Yeah. Here's my software, which is taking into consideration the geographical location of your house, the orientation of the panels, and the incline of the panels on your roof. So it couldn't be any more accurate than that. Mm-hmm. And they're like, yeah, you're right.
I think there's something to be said that about that, though, in terms of like the customer journey, where like you can have the best marketing team in the world and you can have the best, you know, best team in the world essentially, but it's more like getting the customer to trust you and bringing them along on a journey where it's like they're departing with money and they want a confidence, especially for something that they physically, they can go and they can see a solar panel, but they're not going to see
Yeah.
the end product until it's on their roof and it's pretty much there. So you're kind of removing that barrier of doubt, if that makes sense. Was that always something that you kind of was like important to you? Was like the customer journey side of things and making sure that was that something you learned when you were doing your stint in Australia the first time?
Yeah, it's like anything that you sell, the customer experience, the customer journey is everything.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, we don't get it right every single time. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
We make mistakes, but one thing that I always say to all my customers is if we make mistakes, we'll be there to fix it.
Yeah.
And I have proved that time and time again. Like, we're the most highly reviewed solar company in Northern Ireland on Google reviews and Trustpilot. And like we've over 280 5-star Google reviews. Like, those reviews don't lie.
Yeah.
And like customers will read this like anything. It's like TripAdvisor. If you're a restaurant, like, that's what people look at nowadays. They will look at your Google reviews and look at your Trustpilot.
Yeah.
And if your reviews look decent, they'll call you. But for me, that's everything.
Yeah.
And, again, Balmoral show last week, and, people are like, Andrew, why are you in the stand? Like, you've 3 companies running. You employ over 100 staff. I'm like, yeah, but the Balmoral show and things like that, and my customers are what got me here. And that's what I enjoy doing. Like, I enjoy speaking to customers. I enjoy selling. I enjoy being out there and being the face of the company. And because I wear, our company, I wear the emblem on my sleeve. Like, it is my life, and I've built it again, from the ground up. And the customer journey is everything.
Yeah.
If you get the customer journey right, you'll never struggle for work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one thing that sort of really interests me is, where do you think the whole renewables and stuff are going now? Like, say 10 years down the line, I suppose your job is to introduce people to it, sell it to them and stuff, but how do you think they're going to develop over the years now? They are more common and like sort of fitting in with people's lives. Like, I've seen sort of things at the likes of trade shows and stuff of like solar tiles, and how do you think, like, for example, solar panels are going to change over the years and different sort of renewable energies?
So the thing is, solar panels are getting bigger.
Size?
Yeah.
Or
So people always say, I'm sure solar panels are getting smaller, more dinky, blah, blah, blah. So solar panels are becoming higher wattage.
okay.
So like one solar panel 5 years ago was 250 watts.
Mm-hmm.
So to put that in perspective, a light bulb's like 50 watts.
Yeah.
So a solar panel is 250 watts. We're now selling like a 440, 450 watt panel. Commercial panels, we're selling 550, 600s.
Yeah.
We're even getting a container in soon of 700 watt panels.
Yeah.
And it's a question that we get a lot. But sure, why would I buy now? Sure, in 5 years' time, the panels will be even more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
My response back to it every time is, see that BMW sitting in your driveway? Are you not going to buy this BMW model because the next one's going to be a bit faster? The fuel efficiency is going to be a wee bit better. You have to pick your time and say, I am happy. Like, because the savings that I'm going to give you today are based on the equipment today.
Yeah.
So if you're happy with the return and the things of the solar panels, well, why are you waiting for the next one that comes out?
Yeah.
So where are solar panels going? Solar panels are getting bigger. They're getting more powerful. So you will need less of them.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, 3 years ago, a house might have needed 20 panels.
Yeah.
I can achieve the same output with 16 today, but there's no difference. Like the efficiency of solar panels is getting ever so slightly better every couple of years. Like whenever I was in Australia, you were lucky to get a panel over 20% cell efficiency. Now we're dealing with panels at like 22% cell efficiency. So we're not jumping from like 20 to 30, 30 to 40. So it's not that there is no major advancements every year. So like I know a friend of mine used to work for BAE, and they obviously make like fighter jets and different things. And he was doing a project with a company, and they make like these drones powered by solar panels. And like the solar panels are like $100 per watt. And like I'm dealing with solar panels that are like 10 cents per watt.
Yeah.
So like, there is different grades of solar and different grades of solar cells and technology, but it's what's cost effective.
Yeah.
And like, don't get me wrong, there's probably better things. There's P-type, N-type, and then there's like TopCon technology, bifacial. There's so many different things, but like it's it's minimal in terms of like output. Don't get me wrong. P-type and polycrystalline and monocrystalline are the two biggest things. So polycrystalline solar panels are the blue ones. You see like the blue with like a silver frame.
Yeah.
Stand out like a sore thumb, to be honest with you. And then the monocrystalline are typically the black.
Yep.
So like the more sleek looking panels, black frame, black backing on them. Like that's what the monocrystalline, the N-type panels and stuff is the most recent, is what we're dealing with now. So yeah, like, and it's a question we get a lot, because obviously people want to know, well, like, you know, here, if I buy panels now, are they going to be out of date in 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I put solar panels on your roof today, there's a warranty on them for 30 years.
Yeah.
So if anything
Is that
happens,
how long the lifespan sort of? Well,
yeah,
obviously, the warranty covers anyway, but that's the expected sort of.
30 years on panels. So like most people turn around and say, oh, that'll outlive us. And I'm like, well, yeah, if that's the way you want to look at it, yeah, it will. So, you know, in terms of you know, warranty, everything in solar panels is really well warranted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we're going to give a customer a 5-year workmanship warranty, and the panels are warranted for 30 years. And then some people like to call it a converter, but the industry term is called an inverter, which basically converts the solar energy from solar on your roof to usable electric in your house. Like that'll be warranted for 10 or 12 years, depending on what products you use, and you can extend the warranty in that too. So like, you know, everything is really well warranted.
Yeah.
Batteries, again, 10 or 12 years. Now batteries are the ones that people are, you know, because if it's taking you 6 years to get your money back in a battery, and then their warranty runs out in 10, but most manufacturers say they've got a shelf life of about 15. So
yeah, and do you think eventually everything will go that sort of direction, where we get rid of all the fossil fuels and are completely sort of renewables?
Look, it would be great to see. I mean, a lot of countries are already there in terms of like some days where they're 100% renewable generation.
Yeah.
But, you know, in terms of having everything to completely rule out fossil fuels, like I think we're a long way away from that.
Yeah.
You know, like trying to get oil and gas out of every house, even in Northern Ireland, is a massive ask. And like I sort of know that like the government, that's what they really want to do. Like the biggest carbon emissions emitter in the UK and Ireland is the heating of residential properties.
Is that right?
Yeah. So like to get rid of that, like retrofitting a heat pump in the house is chaos. Like it's ripping out radiators, ripping out piping,
putting underfloor
and doing all that sort of stuff. So like you bring a customer that's got 100-year-old house, trying to retrofit a heat pump, that's no thank you.
Yeah, you're sort of waiting for them houses to be phased out more, so that's
which they'll never be done. Like you can't really phase, like people are renovating houses that are 100 years old, 150 years old, 200 years old. You know, and like so they're always going to be about. So like I don't think we'll ever have 100% like renewable of no fossil fuels. Like even cars, like I know electric cars are really rapidly growing, but I just can't see like
they're an interesting topic at the minute, like with the batteries and stuff, with even whether or not they're actually the price of the electric is sort of getting creeping up towards what we're at with petrol and diesel cars, and whether or not they're the batteries, and like there's a lot of talk around the batteries, them explode. Not saying all electric car batteries are going to explode in you, but like just faulty batteries and then how to dispose of them and that sort of thing.
Yeah, like, and that is, and again, like people ask me that question a lot too, and like I know of somebody in particular that has a patented technology to renovate batteries, like to rejuvenate.
From here?
Yeah.
From Newry or something?
Not sure where he's from.
I've heard of this guy. He's only one in the whole of Ireland, isn't it?
I think he's like one of the like main people in the world that have this technology, and like. And the people always like we can't be it's not physically possible to be a generation of throwing away batteries.
Yeah,
like you can't do it. Somebody said to me the other day, "Oh yeah, watch them." I was like, "Yeah, burying a wind turbine blade is different to burying a battery, a lithium-ion battery."
Acid.
You know, so like batteries will be renovated and batteries will be refurbished and put back into use. And the way I see it is, you know, in a couple of years' time, okay. I'll give you X amount of money for your battery to take that off you, and then you get a new one or whatever, or you know, something like that. So like, say you get 50% of the price of your battery back, but then again, the government would have to subsidize that.
No, I didn't make anything
to make it worthwhile. But like, there's a company in Germany actually that sells solar batteries, and they are refurbished. Get this right? Is it refurbished lorry batteries? Or forklift batteries, something mad anyway. That they basically, it's refurbished batteries, and that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So like that is my answer to that is what has to happen. Like we can't just throw away batteries and
Yeah.
oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
I suppose an interesting
You
one
know?
with this, even the likes of yourself who is a bit of a petrol head. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to get away from that sort of thing. The sound of the engine and
Look, it's yeah, like it's like I would love an electric car, you know, and the reason I don't drive one is just because my driving is too sporadic,
yeah,
and like I'm running from pillar to post between meeting to meeting as it is. I just about have time to stop in for 20 minutes to fill the car with fuel, never mind waiting for an hour to charge the car.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so look, there will be a time and a place,
Mm-hmm.
and like I have nothing against them. You know, I've driven Teslas, I've driven other electric cars, and they are great. But I think it suits a certain customer,
And it's
think-
definitely still in its infancy as well. Like,
big time.
yeah.
Big time. Like we obviously do the large scale charge as well, but yeah, it's the infrastructure's not quite there to suit it.
In terms of like going back to the business side of it for you, like, because obviously the engineering side is what you've obviously studied and that's your background, but the business side is almost, I feel it would be safe to say, is something that you've kind of learned along the way. So obviously you alluded a couple of minutes ago there to employing your wife and employing a friend of yours, but then building that out to like now you have over 100 employees. Like, how has that process been for you as an individual? Like, because one thing that we hear a lot of whenever we talk to people on this podcast and just in general, like even after the camera stops rolling, when we ask people, like we had a guy on a couple of episodes probably before you, from Nomadic Watches, and he was saying like, you know, employing people is a stressful ordeal,
Yeah.
you know, paying people's wages. So what's that been like for you in terms of that journey?
Like hands down, I mean, there's no two ways about it. Staff is the hardest thing in any business, you know, because you're trying to manage something which is not consistent. You know, you're managing people's hormones, you're managing people's attitude, you're managing people's mood swings. That's not consistent.
Yeah.
You know, stock prices I can manage, transportation I can manage, I can hedge it, I can do different things. But when you're managing members of staff, and like whenever I was going for job interviews, I nearly undersold myself because I was so scared of starting the job, and then this they'd been like to me, "Fuck, this guy told me he could do this, but he can't."
Yeah.
Like, or he's not as good as what he sold himself. But I find that there's a lot of people now that like they tell you they can do something to get the job, and then they're like, "You told me you could do this."
Yeah. That's something that you have sort of dealt with.
That's something that I have found, yeah. And don't get me wrong, like, you know, it is a struggle to get good staff.
Yeah.
Like, especially in the world that we work in, the renewable sector, like sparks and electricians and roofers, you know, they're in high demand because of, you know, the solar industry has boomed so fast. And don't get me wrong, like, you get an electrician, he can walk down to Dublin tomorrow and make a really good living. You know, no ifs, buts, maybes. He could be the most subpar electrician out there.
Yep.
But he'll probably earn more than a solicitor.
Yeah. It's hard to compete with that.
Yeah.
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 And that's what people don't understand. And like my wage bill, like for one of my company is over 1.5 million euro. Like for my Southern Ireland company, like it's nuts. And you know, and that is the biggest thing. You know, again, like for me, was laughing like this the other day. Like, you know, these are the things that you don't learn in school:
Yeah.
cash flow, wages, you know, tax, how to mitigate paying as much tax, and different things that you can do within the legal realms. But like, you know, staff training, and it that's a niche in itself. Now, I feel that I am a good boss. I hopefully my staff would say the same about me. But like, you know, sometimes I'm really too nice,
Yeah.
and I just want everybody to have fun at work. And like, whenever I see that somebody doesn't enjoy their work, like it affects me personally. I'm like, oh my God, like someone doesn't like to come into my workplace.
Would you say you have to draw the line between sort of boss and
big time.
friend? Is that an important thing for you?
Boss and friends hard.
Yeah.
Boss and friends hard because, you know, you've brought on friends that, you know, and friends have came and gone in the past, and you know, if they decide to take it the wrong way, there's nothing I can do. And like, you know, I've spoke to a lot of people about staff and about hiring friends, and every single time I said, Andrew, you have to separate that. You have to think about the business, because, you know, and like my staff like to remind me every so often, like, saying you employ 100 staff, to say that is fine, but whenever you do, that's 100 mortgages.
Yeah.
That's 100 mouths plus families
Yeah.
that I have on my shoulders, that I have to ensure that the company keeps going, that all these people have jobs.
Yeah.
And I think that's what probably the most frustrating thing is these people don't realise what goes on behind the scenes to ensure that they all have a job and they're all well looked after. And the way that you get treated, and like, trust me, I've been to hell and back with staff.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's staff taking me for X, Y, and Z, you know, for the most stupidest of reasons. And when you see what you've done for them, like, you know, whether you've helped them out of a sticky situation money-wise or whatever you've done, and like, sometimes you see, because the staff only, now don't get me wrong, because obviously this is going to be seen by a lot of people, you can't tar every member of staff with the same brush, but like, you know, a lot of staff just think that you have it easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My working day doesn't start until 5 o'clock. My working day starts when I go home,
Yeah.
because my 9 to 5, now thankfully now I have a great team behind me, great management staff that, you know, I can do a lot of stuff during the day, but it still doesn't help the fact that I'm still on the laptop at 11 o'clock at night, and that still happens to this day.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it takes, and that's what people don't see. They see the money, they see the holidays,
Yeah.
nice cars. They don't realise what goes on behind the scenes. Like, I have a very good friend of mine from England, and he owns a distribution company, so they do like, you know, like drop shipping.
Yeah.
But he is on a big scale, and he put up a thing the other day that what was he was saying? I forgot what I was going to say, but basically, like, he says people would have to be a psycho to want to spend a day in his shoes to
Yeah.
see what he goes through. Like, they all think it's all easy until they actually spend a day in your shoes to see what you go through, the decisions that you have to make on the cusp like that. That can be the result of losing thousands or making thousands, or, you know, losing a member of staff. Do you keep that staff? Do you let them go when they're looking more money?
Yeah.
Like, staff members, and rightly so, like, they don't understand at the same time. Like, a staff member comes to you looking more money, but if you can't afford to pay them any more money,
Yeah.
but you don't want to lose it, what do you do?
Yeah.
You know, and
I suppose in their head they're like, fuck this, I'm leaving, like, you know.
yeah, and they just take that as, oh, he doesn't want to pay more money. But like, what happens if I just can't literally afford for that role to pay any more money for that role?
Yeah.
You know, so it is a very fine line, and sometimes you have to, you know, you can't wear your heart on your sleeve. You have to literally treat it as a business decision,
Yeah.
and that hands down is the hardest thing.
Yeah. And how have you, from, you know, to 2021 to now, how have you personally progressed as a boss, as a business owner?
The biggest thing that probably has progressed really is understanding the numbers behind the business
Yeah.
and what they mean. You know, we've obviously went from, in 3 years, we went from 0 to 15 million turnover, which, you know, if you ask anybody, like, they will all, like, that's, I don't want to sound big-headed, but that it is a massive undertaking. You know, 15 million turnover is not a small turnover, and obviously there's a lot of things that come behind that. And like, you know, we buy a lot of stock. There's a lot of money comes into the business, but a lot of money goes out of the business. And the biggest thing has been basically leading on from talking about staff there and about understanding. You have to know enough's enough. You know, in terms of your costs, you have to know that your numbers aren't running away. Don't get me wrong, like, management of staff and trying to be an effective leader is the main thing. Like, but it's the biggest thing really, because the business is scaled so quick. It's been trying to bring in the processes behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Hiring the staff's great. Hiring doing this, but whenever you have so many staff, you need to have the procedures and processes in the background so that everybody knows what's black and what's white and how things go. Because you can't turn around and say, "Oh, you didn't do that process for him. You treated him differently than me," and people don't forget things.
Yeah.
And you know, when you've got 100 staff, and like, we have full-time HR now. And, you know, without her, I'd be stuck. You know, like, there is a lot of things, changes of minimum wage, you know, increases in pension, all that stuff. Like, there is literally, like, honestly, sometimes you look at it and you think to yourself, why do I bother? Like, when you see the amount of hoops that you have to jump through, or when it comes to like an HR issue with a business, and you think you're just like, you know, you don't have a leg to stand on.
Yeah.
So you have to be so careful, and that's why Ed and I do now. I always bring HR with me.
Yeah.
Any interviews, anything at all, any disciplinaries, always have to have a second member staff or HR, because you can get yourself in a sticky situation very quickly.
Yeah.
Just by letting your emotions run away with you.
Yeah. It's a lot of weight on your shoulders, like, and I think that's like it's actually quite nice to hear you open up about stuff like that, because I feel like that's something that people don't understand. Like, as you said there, like people see the holidays and the perks, they see what they want to see.
Correct.
But yeah, it's quite, for anybody watching this, and like, our demographic is definitely that younger generation who are getting into starting their own businesses and stuff. So like, I think it's also important you see the good side, but you also see the stuff that you do have, the reality, I suppose, not necessarily the bad side, but the reality of it's going to be up and down.
Absolutely. And, obviously we spoke about earlier, that's why, I now looking after, winning Young Business Person of the Year, that I want to basically to start to give back to the younger entrepreneur and to start our Young Entrepreneur Academy to basically to help, because whenever I started, yes, I obviously had a mentor there. Yeah. But it is very hard to find a business mentor to help you through it. Like, you come and start it, you have an idea now, how to start a company. How do I go and register a company in Companies House? How to do that? How do I go and open up a bank? The stupidest of things, the smallest of things, everybody focuses on the idea. Yeah. But you need a business. You need a fully fledged business. You need to have a solicitor. Mm-hmm. You need to have an accountant. There's so many things that go on behind the scenes that people don't realise, but it's through that will of just getting started. But it's those wee things that put people off starting. Mm-hmm. So if you can help people through that, if somebody has a really good idea, and obviously then hopefully we'll turn things into where I possibly will become an angel investor in certain businesses if I think, like I suppose like a mini, The Apprentice. Yeah. Because I think that'd be quite a cool thing to do. And again, that's where I think that my strengths are is motivating people and incentivizing people to basically just to start what they want to do and being that sort of Mr. Motivator. Yeah. I think that's what I enjoy doing. That's always been me from day dot, business or personal life, whatever it is. I am always that guy of trying to bring the morale up. Yeah. I'm always that guy in university projects bringing everybody together. Mm-hmm. Whenever the going gets tough, it's right, guys, let's regroup. What's the issue that we're dealing with, and basically bringing everybody in, bringing everyone's spirits up. Yeah. That is me through and through. So that's something you want to maybe, could you see yourself, that's sort of, we always end the podcast by asking people, like, you've look at what you've done, but what is the next step? Like what, because obviously you've won your business young business person of the year. Don't know why I got so tongue tied over that. Young business person of the year. And I suppose now what is the next steps for you? Is it starting that academy? And yeah, so there's 2 or 3 different businesses that I obviously have in the background that are sort of in its infancy or hasn't been started yet, but have ideas. So there is a lot to come later on this year, and obviously the biggest thing for me now is to carry the momentum after winning that award, which a great honour to win it. And well done to the other shortlisted candidates, but it's to carry that momentum through into my own personal brand. Yeah, to keep anything going, because at the end of the day, as I said, I definitely do have a touch of ADHD, and I do obviously I get bored very quickly. Yeah. And thankfully I have a great team again, as I've said it many times around me, that I can leave the business and it runs itself. Yeah. So that I can focus on other things that because there's a lot of things that I want to do. I'm 30 years of age, and there's a lot of things. Still got a lot. Yeah. A lot of. There's a lot of things that I want to do, so I suppose the best way to answer that is watch the space. Yeah, you'll outlive solar panels anyway. Here's hoping. Maybe the time it'll be 50 years warranty on them. That's what I was going to ask. Like, for anybody listening right now who's obviously interested, like I think we've touched on the start solar side of, so if people are residentials or businesses are looking to potentially inquire and get the ball rolling, we'll drop the link in the description for the website and stuff to put in an inquiry. But for people who want to follow you on your journey, because I think there is from talking to you before we even hit record, like there's exciting things to come, not just for Start Solar, but for you personally, which is great. So for those who want to maybe follow that, LinkedIn or where's the best place? LinkedIn, and obviously personal Instagram as well, which you can put down in the description. So I'm probably not as active on there as what I should be, but obviously as I now increase my personal brand, that's where obviously a lot of the things in the new business ventures will be announced. And obviously the Young Entrepreneur Academy will be something fairly exciting, especially for the younger generation if they're watching this podcast, and obviously if anybody wants to reach out to me, as it is now for helping things, more than happy just to give back. Because I don't think that there is enough young people now. There's a lot of people on YouTube and doing different things and making good money on YouTube, which fair play to them, But in terms of, you know, traditional businesses,
Yeah.
I think to a lot of young people it's quite daunting.
Yeah.
Because again, we don't have enough of education at school about how to actually run a business.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and it can be quite a quiet place.
Yeah.
It can be quite a lonely place.
And
whenever
some
you're
people don't want to give out the information for fear that they're gonna.
take their idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But very interesting, and obviously very, very glad to have you on the podcast. And thanks very much for coming.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Hope you've enjoyed. But we'll obviously leave all the links in the description. So if you want to get to know a bit more about Andrew and stuff, and then obviously the Start Solar stuff, link in the description. Go give it a click and find out more. But thanks very much for listening. Until next time.
Cheers, guys.
Cheerio.
Thank you.